And welcome back to Winter Wolf's Den, guys. We are back in full effect for the second Sunday in a row. We're doing HBO Max's Last of Us series. Just ended a little while ago. We're trying to get this one hot off of the stove for a change for you guys. I'm Winter Wolf. The guy in the other box is King Z. King, what's going on, dude?
Nothing much. Sitting here, just got done wrap it up. Watched it with the wife. Got her thoughts. Got my thoughts. We'll get into it.
We need a separate. We're gonna need a separate infographic for Gabby thoughts. We can throw that in there or something. That'd be kind of cool. I'll get a graphic going for that. All right, guys. So we're gonna get into episode 2 right now. Fair warning: lots of spoilers in our discussions as we go. So if you haven't seen this, please check out our video after you watch the episode, and then comment below what you thought, because we're gonna have a lot to talk about on this one. But first, here comes the opening salvo. King Z tells me that after the opening salvo, I'm supposed to, as the host of the show, open with a question or a major observation of my own for him to springboard off of. And I actually do have one, and to many people's chagrin, it probably is going to make you think of other shows that we already covered, and I hope that's actually my intention, so I hope you get something out of it. What did you think overall of the pacing on this show? I have a very specific follow-up to that.
This is one of the things. This is one of the things that we were talking. Me and my wife were talking about. It was like we've come to conclude that Pedro. How do you say his last name again?
Pascal.
Pedro Pascal love slow shows.
Yep. Okay, I could see that, having seen a couple of his other ones, and the direct comparison that I'm trying to make here, just in terms of pacing, is obviously with Andor, because that's the first show that you and I covered together. And my observation there was a lot of the grief, whatever, that Andor got as a series is that it's too slow. Nothing's happening for episodes at a time. Nothing's happening. Nothing interesting's happening. And I'm not saying by any stretch that was my impression of The Last of Us episode 2 tonight. It wasn't. But it was a noticeably slower show than episode 1, except for the key scene we'll talk about later. But yep. I think the distinction here and the criticism that people would have had of Andor is nothing interesting happened on an action level for stretches of Andor, but here, given the nature of the genre, I felt like there was always this foreboding sense of tension. Always. So you're always knowing that the characters are in danger, given the world, given the setup, and the stakes and all that good stuff. So even though they're not running and gunning, there's no car chases, no one's rappelling down a building side like Call of Duty or anything. You're kind of like, you're holding the remote and you're like, oh, all right, well, any second something evil's gonna happen. Impressions from you guys?
Yeah, with the pacing of this show, you can definitely tell there is, especially trying to expand on a story that was built for a video game. Yep. Which is supposed to either draw you in for a couple hours and then you leave it, come back, and the story's still simple enough for you to follow and be away from it for a while.
Got it.
Well, this one, they're trying to build a bigger world of what's going on, which I do appreciate. Like they started off in a different area, flashback scene again, like they did in the first one. I have a comment on that to follow. Yep. And then you have it where it has pretty much your steady show beats, where it's like you have your safety, you have your movement, then you hit your tension, you have your climax, and then you have your payoff moment, and then end of episode with cliffhanger or new objective
identified, right?
Chief.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now let me ask you my follow-up to that, and then we'll get into our next segment, because I think you hit on something that it was actually the first note that I took about expanding the world. And I think you and I actually talked about this offline when we were talking about a particular book that we both liked a couple weeks ago in the zombie genre, but we'll get into that in the next segment. The follow-up observation just to what we were just talking about pacing-wise is, if anybody that watched our Andor videos remembers, King Z is a big fan, or not a big fan, but a big observer of the 3-act structure and story arcs coming through in videos in threes. And that if you have a typical 10-episode set, you generally get three-episode kind of mini-series within the series and then a climax that ties it all together. Do you think that's in play here? Having played the game, I know it's been a hot minute. Okay, see, again, we're on the same page there.
Yeah, I believe that they're painting this into a straight 9 episodes, so it'll probably be a 3 episode if they do stay in the threes, because it isn't 9 episodes.
Okay.
But I believe they're going to try to keep it close to the game, which the game truly didn't follow a 3-act structure. It was more of I would say a peak and valley where you had high tension and then you really didn't have anything for a little while. Explore the world, survive, back to major action, come back down. And I think they're going to follow that type of format in this show.
That's a really interesting commentary on that, because I think I'm halfway to that exact point after you explained it. I think the other half, where I kind of deviate a little bit, is I think there's still room to pick up some of the not that The Last of Us had open world and side missions and things like that for fans of the games and things, but I think that we're going to see at some point here there will be within an episode a short-term objective identified that we need to raid ammunition here so we can go do this there. Not that stuff comes from the game, but I think when we're talking about padding out material to get to, was it 8 episodes? 9? What are we getting here? Is it 8?
9. It's 9 episodes.
Okay. I think sooner or later we will see some of these mini quests kind of thrown in, and hopefully they kind of stay true to the content, even though they're improvising, like true to like the tone of the content. Like I don't want to see anybody go off to like a carnival for an hour and a half or some bullshit for no reason other than a zombie attack. It wouldn't be worth it. All right, that was the opening salvo. We're coming back 10 times harder on this show in the assault mode segment coming up next. But first, show meta for you guys. King Z.
Am I the meanest?
Show meta.
Am I the baddest mofo go down around this town?
Show meta.
Welcome to the show meta. I have the glow. This is episode 2, named Infected. It was directed by Neil Druckmann himself. It was still written, this episode was written by both Neil Druckmann and Mazin. And this is where the trio of Jess, Ellie, and Joey travel through a rundown Boston as they try to get to a group of fireflies. The cinematographer for this one was the same one from the first episode. It was Kinchi... I can't say this. I'm sorry. I'm bad with names. But he mostly known for Chernobyl Abyss, which is different from Chernobyl. This was a film, a 2-hour film that he shot, which if you go and look at stills or even go watch it and give this guy some love, is you didn't see a lot of the same type of lighting and mood of the coloring in that one and in The Last of Us. So he kind of has a style. Of course, Dr. Man is known for his video games of The Last of Us and the Uncharted series.
All right, guys. It's time to get deep into the weeds now. We're giving you assault mode. This is where we're going to cut all the way down to the bone of whatever it is we're talking about and give you as much of our observations as we can.
For a Vulcan gun.
There it is. Loving it. Assault mode from the Winter Wolf coming up right now. Dude, I hated this episode. I hated it start to finish. I'm just playing, guys. I didn't hate it at all. Dude, this show is great. Let me just gush for a quick second before I get into my notes. Dude, I think HBO has a hit on their hands. It's almost too bad that this is based on a video game, because I think some people are going to poo-poo it right away and never check it out, and it's too damn bad. They're missing out on something special here.
That's because adaptations of video games are so hard, and they really haven't hit any. I do believe they're getting better. Like the Uncharted movie was pretty good with Tom Holland and
it was passable.
Mark Wahlberg.
I'll give you passable, but not awful.
Yeah,
Not awful. New Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Yeah. The new Mortal Kombat. Speaking of movie adaptations, way off source in a lot of ways, but on a production level, pretty good. Not bad.
Yeah.
Writing level is kind of bad, but yeah. All right, dude. So here we go. And I know we were going to try and do our thing where we condense it a little bit. I have way too much to gush about to get out of here in 35 minutes. So buckle up. This is me gushing about this show because I liked a lot of stuff. I'm going to identify right now that I 100% need every episode to start with an elsewhere story. Like last week, how you mentioned it was in the 60s and they were just talking about the cordyceps in general. This week, guys, it was the army. I think it was the Indonesian army picking up a mycologist. I don't know. I think it's mycologist. I think basically a fungal expert. She's coming in to do an autopsy on a patient 0 in Indonesia. Very tense, very foreboding, excellent effects. very creepy. And then when we were talking earlier and offline about a book we both read, we were talking about World War Z. And I think this is a logical and very doable possible expansion that this show can work with, where every week for, 7 more episodes, they can open with a really tense gut punch from somewhere else in the world that shows how boned humanity is. It could be just, a mom and a kid. It doesn't have to be another doctor. It doesn't need to be another doctor on a panel. It could be basically any of the vignettes they could borrow from World War Z, just kind of modified with some creative storytelling to set the tone. Because I was on edge. Every word that woman had to say, I was like, oh, humanity's boned. We're done. This is it.
Well, the whole Jakarta part was set up in episode 1 in the flashback scene, the prequel.
Yep.
Of Joel when they were talking about where is Jakarta? I think it's in Africa, and then she tells them that it's the capital of Indonesia. It's not a country; it's a city.
Dude, it was good. And then just to wrap up, just this little quick segment on the opening of the show that isn't even real time. It was 5 years before the show, whichever. It's Patient Zero stuff, but. The plan that the doctor goes with, that she volunteers to the military officer, is the Redeker plan, essentially. Well, actually, I guess it's not really a Redeker plan, but it's on that level. It's basically the mycologist is telling the heartbroken military officer, bro, there's no vaccine. There is no medicine.
There's no medicine.
And he says, well, what should we do? And she's just like, you got to start bombing. And so you're like, oh, this is a cold-blooded bitch that's going to be all like, but get me out of the country. But she's like, can you just send me home now? Like, I want to be with my family. Because she knows they're going to do
over.
It. Yep, that it's done. The cordyceps is mutated. She's seen it firsthand. Where effed is a species at that point. Dude, I thought this opening segment here for the no gunshots, it might actually have been even better tonally than the obvious intro we got last week that's the opening to the game. That was pretty visceral, obviously. But this was spot on, top shelf craftsmanship, without a doubt.
I can agree with you with going with the somewhere else type storyline to start it off. I forgot what it's called in a book, like where they read like an excerpt from another book from like the lore of the book.
Epistolary, I believe.
I believe that's it. And I think that's what they're doing with these little. It was about 4 minutes long, right?
Oh, dude, that was a long segment, dude. That was like 12 minutes.
Really?
After cutting credit,
didn't feel that way.
She was at lunch. They drove in. She did the autopsy, and then she was sitting in an office somewhere talking to the office. I'm telling you, 12 minutes easy.
Yeah, it was 4 scenes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was good.
So
dude,
what I think they're going to try to build is one, they like in the first episode they set it all up with the 1970s where he talked about like it being this could happen, but some things had to change. Now we have the first when it happened, the first of the people being infected in Jakarta. And now the next one, I believe, we'll see a little bit of the aftermath of Jakarta and people leaving Jakarta as it spreads.
Yep. We're going to get that very real world, how we saw people panicking and trying to fly out of places, in our own situation, a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And then I think then it will build to like how it got to the U.S. and then how it started to spread in the U.S.
I think on that same note, I think what they can borrow from, additionally from like World War Z or, I Am Legend and things, we'll probably get that flashback sequence that has the American military screening people at a base or at a bridge or something like that. Something where there's a choke point where like the legitimately awful tone setting thing will be the opening fire on like the civilians and shit like that. So I think we'll get that for sure. Usually we have about 70 scenes we want to go through when we do this kind of thing. But for the assault mode here, I really only have the one scene that really kind of gets me, the museum scene. So I don't know if maybe we want to talk about the museum scene as being like the big action set piece, and then we could just kind of rip through some of the pluses and minuses. And I have no minuses, dude. It's just going to be stuff that I admire, honestly.
The things I liked about it is that they stayed scientifically accurate to fungus, because fungus can communicate miles away from each other. They're pretty much they refer to as the wood wide network.
Yep.
To how fast they can spread information through chemicals.
Yep.
So they used that in this, which was amazing. Like you could step on something and then a mile away, a whole bunch of infested know where you are. Unlike normal zombies, they need sound or something to happen that draws you in. Yeah.
Yep, true that. So the museum set piece, dude, I think you called it. We ended the last episode with the clicker being up on the highway or in a building in silhouette, distant. It wasn't obvious. You had to be kind of paying attention to see it. So we get the bit where they have to detour around a massive infestation, like a sleeping nest during the day.
Yeah.
That's their normal route. That's the safe route. And they kind of foreshadow that, saying, you know, there's the short route, but that's the you get killed route, and then the long way. And they go and do the long way. A building almost falls on them. And then they end up getting boned into having to take the short route to the museum, or the short route through the museum anyway. And you know, I'm gonna leave
the
a
comedic timing in that where she was like, when he was like the short way or quickly get killed way. He goes, well, with the information I have, I think we go the long way.
We're gonna get to Bella Ramsey because I gotta give her some pluses this week for sure. The museum. I just want to get the museum scene out of the way with the clicker, because guys familiar with the game, the clicker makes its appearance here. Devastatingly disgusting, terrifying. I loved it. I'll give you my quick on that entire bit. My favorite part of that entire segment is that Joel and Tess are not Delta Force. They're not Halo Spartans. They body shot, they miss, they get disarmed, they trip and fall, they're scared. I love that. That is some good shit, because as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, dude, you just shoot that thing in the head, right? Because if you just double tap it, no. Dude, fucking, I can't shoot straight. Neither of them are soldiers. That's out of. Neither of them are. They're not the Avengers. Like, they're not John Wick. You know.
And one of the things that was brought to mind, like, he had the rifle and he couldn't get it up in time. Right. Which goes back to when they tell you, like, if you have a gun in a holster and someone has a knife and they're within 15 feet of you, the guy with the knife wins.
Yep.
Because by the time you pull your weapon, aim, and get a shot off, they're already on top of you with the knife.
Dude, my 7-year-old can move 15 feet in less than a second and a half. Fact. You know what I mean? But and we're talking, you know, just real world physics and accuracy just in that one moment. The other part that I really like there, as a non-firearms expert, you know, I'll pitch it over to you with a little bit more experience. But if Joel's carrying an M4, we can, you know, probably assume it's chambered in 5.56, correct? Typical.
Well, that should have been based on how he attained it. Was a military style M16. Okay. The only problem was that it fired like an A1, which has the full auto, where a A2, which would have been more common, would only have a 3-round burst.
One of the things I noticed about him firing up close on that clicker, though, is that you didn't get that stupid Hollywood over-exaggerated clicker gets thrown back like 7 miles because he took, you know, like rifle fire. So I was attributing that to like the low caliber round that doesn't over penetrate, that doesn't hit with.
Well, actually, a 5.56 does some damage.
Oh no, it'll do damage. But will it throw a dude across a room?
In basic training, they demonstrated by shooting an ammo cannon. It had a small hole in the back, but the back of it was blown
the exit was
out
still
of
pretty
it.
nasty. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
like I said, as a non-expert, so I punch it over to you. But I thought that was good. If I had to have any minuses out of that scene at all, and this is just me being the ultimate of nitpicker, when Tess bails him out with the hatchet to the clicker's head, right? There's an entire mechanic in the game where you shiv these things to the head that make them one-hit kills. That way you don't have to shoot them. So it's kind of like, oh, all right, but it's a show and it's an action scene. And this is such awful nitpicking that I'm almost ashamed to even bring it up. But I had to point it out because I can't go 100%. They got it all right, especially with some of the other pluses I have here where I just gush credit. But any other big takeaways from that scene for you before I just kind of fire down my list here?
It actually reminded me of playing that level where you go against the 2 clickers and you hit. I mean, I died so many times in the game because I couldn't get the stealth and throwing something in the right time.
I was hoping you did the bottle throw. I think we're going to get that at some point. I think we'll get that in the subway the next time they're in there. But that would be kind of cool.
Well, he did it in a different way. In this one, he did it with the statue.
That's true.
The glass case.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. He did. Because as that happened, I'm like, he didn't throw it behind him at the door, so I'm not sure how that's gonna. But it was to draw attention away from Ellie and Tess. Good call. I forgot all about that. I thought that whole scene was pretty good. I'm gonna segue that scene into a couple of my big pluses for the episode, and I think as a game player too, you'll appreciate these. This show continues to demonstrate, and I hope whoever out there is. Netflix if you're watching, Hulu if you're watching, more HBO, anybody else that's making these adapting IPs, watch this show, right? I count no fewer than at least 3 very minor things that this show does, but as a fan of the game, the minute I see him, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is The Last of Us. This makes perfect sense. And the first one I had, there's game mechanics that basically boost this show into looking like the actual game. And I just used the word boost, I'm gonna use it again. In a second episode straight, we see Joel and Tess do the boost up mechanic, where like he lifts her up to the level, and then it doesn't happen in this one, but in the previous, she had reached down and kind of pulled him back up. That's an in-game mechanic. It seems simple, but dude, that grounds me in the experience of that game. The other one, in the museum, and maybe just remind myself on this note piece, is during the chase, Ellie hits the floor and she's like crawling away under desks and shit like that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a thing in the game. If it's not this game, it's in other games like it. And if it bled over into this, I apologize.
Yeah, where you can see your nets, and then it's like move to your nets cover, move to your nets cover.
And just in those FMV sequences in the game, that just like the terrified, child character that isn't armed and is also not, a Halo Spartan or whatever. The only thing she can do is crawl away. That's her option there. That's it. And the final one came up near the end after they survived that sequence when Tess is bandaging up the ankle. How does Ellie move on to the next leg of their journey? She crosses a plank that's been laid between buildings. Dude, that's straight out of The Last of Us. That's extensively out of that.
You can even go to the part where Tess goes around and unlocks the door.
Yep.
That's part of the game.
Yep. Dude, this is what I'm saying, dude. It's like there's I'm sure we even missed a couple because we're going live right after the show pretty much. They've done exactly what so far, and again, early, but I'm digging it. But they've done everything that Netflix's Resident Evil and Paramount could not do, and Paramount didn't do with Halo. So it can be done, people. This show so far, no joke, no lie, is doing exactly what we all have, or people on this side of the entertainment fence with these IPs being adapted. This is the shit we've complained about in these other shows. This show right now has lined all their ducks up in a row, and it's just ba-pop, 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 and it's getting all of them. And they're making it look easy. None of it looks forced. All those three things we just talked about are things that happen in the game that they seamlessly kind of inserted into the show in places where it made logical sense because they're just adapting the game's source.
Yeah. Now, let's take it from a different angle.
Go.
Let's think about it. People who didn't play the game, who are just stumbling onto this show. If they become a fan of the show, they might go back and check out the game.
Yep.
And they're going to see what we're seeing, and they might even appreciate it more. Because they're going to cut out a lot of the story part of it, like the backstories and stuff like that, but they're still going to get a great story with great gameplay. But I mean, if you're just there for the show, if you're never going to play the game, it is also a good standalone show as well so far. Like, I've seen no major story issues. They're not moving the story too long so people don't understand what's going on. They're not doing exposition fights where just try to explain something with big exposition dumps or stupid conversations to fill in exposition. So they're telling the story without telling you the story, which is, I think, a great way for people who are not fans of the game, who do know what's coming for the fans of the game, but keeping the suspense. One of the things me and my wife were talking about, like, the whole, like, them going silent at the very beginning of the museum. There was no music playing to build tension. Like, music is used to tell you how you're supposed to feel in the scene, but there wasn't any. But the tension was there the whole time. Every step, the creak in the stairs, them falling over, the quake at the top when they fell over, and then you started hearing the click. You started hearing the movement, and then you knew we just left the frying pan and now we're in the fire.
Dude, I'm glad you brought up the bit with the no music because I thought I was crazy when I was watching it. And I'm not going to go sidebar, but I'm going to draw a juxtaposition here. Right? One of the things that I dislike most about current Marvel is the over-reliance on musical cues to cover up shit writing. What I mean is when there's the heroic death scene, or when there's the action scene, or when shit needs to get nostalgic, all they have to do is dial up some Guns N' Roses or Metallica, and literally everybody over 35 goes crazy and automatically falsely inserts the rush of endorphins from that nostalgia bait in the music, and they bomb it over the crap we got. I'm looking at you, Thor Love and Thunder, directly, okay? Dude, all they had to do was release a 1.5-minute long trailer that shows Thor growing up set against Sweet Child of Mine, and all of a sudden we've got millions of assholes nationwide across the world lining up to watch this movie without having seen any early footage, with seeing behind the scenes, photos of how awful Gore looked in the movie and everything else. So the music, like you said, played appropriately, in the right spots, is really effective. It can also be overused as a band-aid against crap, but cutting it out altogether when they went silent was a brilliant decision.
Yeah.
So I was definitely digging on that. We were talking a second ago about the comedic timing and like the banter that they had, picking roots. One of the upsides, or one of the pluses I have for this episode for sure, is I think Bella Ramsey was better as Ellie in this episode. She was a little too edgy still in a couple of places, nothing major, but she was also really vulnerable in places too, right? Specifically, and these are the 2 points I wanted to hit on. You feel free to stop me, correct me, throw in your own.
Okay.
When she's kind of doing the getting to know Joel thing in the hallway while Tess is going around and unlocking the door. That was a great scene, by the way, because it was funny. It was a funny, effective character building moment where where each of them knows the other one is trying to extend an olive branch and be less hostile, because he's asking questions about her and then shooting some down, but then she kind of gives like an eye roll and she's like, okay, where are you from? But it was a good scene, and I think this is the beginning of them coalescing into a team a little bit. So I thought she was great in that part. And then later in the museum, where other shows and other movies kind of lose me, is where the teenager or the kid is telling the seasoned, battle-hardened adults what best to do. They told this chick to shut her trap, stay behind us, know you can't have a gun, and to follow directions or you die. You will be torn apart, right? So she does all those things, and in the meantime, as she's doing those things, she's still kind of like cowering behind a counter because she's afraid. This is something that she's not immune to. It will kill her. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then the bit again with like the crawling under the desks and the tables quickly to get away. She didn't get up and She-Hulk a desk over on top of one. She didn't hold anything at arm's distance and then shank it with the buck knife or nothing like that. She's just a kid, which is the point of the game, is that she's a terrified kid out in the worst kind of world you could be in as a kid.
Yet still enjoying the world because she's never seen it before.
Very important bit of character building there, when just not even the bit inside the hotel where she was like kind of goofing around, anything like that. And actually, I'm going to tie this part into a couple of the graphics I'm going to send you. You can throw them up here now. Ellie enjoys this world, and I think it's easy because, as you guys can see here, the world for a post-fungal zombie apocalypse is very colorful. You get a lot of greens, a lot of yellows. Ellie's jacket's red, or maroon. And it doesn't, when you go back and you watch things like, 28 Days Later, Night of the Living Dead, any of these things, the world always has that same shitty, monotone, gray, crumbling concrete thing. But this show, again, picks up right from the game. Sunsets, sunrises, vivid plant life as like nature is retaking the concrete jungle of Boston. When they get into the hotel, the rainwater that's at the bottom of the stairs is like lily pad green. There's yellow ducks. There's a frog on a piano that's got colorful skin, colorful eyes, and it makes it feel vibrant and alive despite it being the world after people. And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, because the world will live without us. I watched a great documentary once. It was called "What Would Happen If." It was like if all the humans disappeared at the exact same time.
It's called 100 Years Later, I think. I think it's called 100 Years Later. It was a Discovery documentary, I think, like 5 years ago tops. Yep.
And they were talking about like the temperature of the Earth would drop by 2.3 degrees because our body heat would be gone to help heat it. And then they were talking about like what would happen, like glass, like 10 years in, glass in the buildings would start breaking, and like the pavement would start breaking with plant life growing through.
Yep.
The animals would start retaking cities and stuff like that. It was a good documentary. If you ever get a chance, go look it up. It's on the Discovery. It's probably on Discovery Plus somewhere if you have that subscription.
Actually, and you should if you have HBO Max. I think that's all bundled into Warner Brothers, so that's probably out there, isn't it? No,
Discovery's with Disney.
Oh, well then listen to Kingsley, guys. He knows where to stream the educational stuff. I just watched Check It Blown Up. The other thing, Kingsley, if you could do me a favor and throw up on the screen right here, is there were, again, just like episode 1, specific visuals taken right out of the game, and I've got these screen capped already. I'm going to throw them over to you. You throw them up there for me right here. There's a shot early on when they're coming out of the quarantine zone after they wake up and do their their breakfast combo. They're walking across the highway, and in the background you can basically see like the city skyline, kind of just as they're panning this way, and it's just there. So it's just a really interesting shot that I'm pretty sure was right from the game. The second one, as you guys can see here, is the camera set up inside the hotel, and it's Joel forcing the door open, like the creaking door open. I'm like, that's every walking into the building cinematic ever, where you have to tap the triangle button to either lift the garage door up or pry it. You know what I mean? Right out of the game.
Keep tapping.
Right, or it's gonna drop and the clickers are gonna come. Right, and then the third one is them rolling up on the museum. The museum is foreground. It's giant. It's looming. It's right here, right? And then the characters enter from like the lower right-hand side of the screen, kind of silhouetted up against the museum. And I'm like, these guys must have had the game running on like a monitor as they were constructing their shots, because they're again hitting every nail, because these are the things. There's no downside to doing it. These are the things that ground us, you and me, our viewers that that play the Last of Us game. We want this stuff here, and it costs them nothing to do that, because the normie viewer, like you said, that hasn't played the game wouldn't know that was something from the game and wouldn't care, but it adds value to us. And we're going to go gush and tell our friends, our wives, our girlfriends, our younger brothers, whatever, how great this show is. And that way, if they're like, genre adjacent, if they're Walking Dead fans, if they're, other zombie fans, if they're horror fans, whatever, they're not going to care that this was a game. They're going to show up and watch the show.
Yeah, I'm going to drop a little knowledge on you. So how they do that, so pre-production is a very long process that starts when a project is greenlit. One of the things they make is called a lookbook. What they do is they go through, like if it's an original screenplay, they go through the director and the director of photography once he's hired. They go through different movies and they talk about different looks that they like, and they put it together, and then they give it to the gaffer, and the DP and the gaffer try to figure out how to light to make this type of look. Because if you don't light it right, there's not enough information for the colorist when he gets it in post to put the proper look on it. So they do a lookbook. The other thing they build is that they break down each scene and they do storyboards. What they could have done for this is actually go to the game, take screenshots, and build out their storyboard that way. This way, the art department, your wardrobe, everybody knows what they're looking for. And this is disseminated to the whole crew so they can start getting stuff together when they're buying props, when they're buying wardrobe, when they're buying everything else, when they're starting to build sets.
Yep.
This is huge for that. And I mean, you can definitely tell there are some digital builds in this. It's very well blended. I couldn't tell how or where they shot this, if it was a sound stage, if it was a back lot. So kudos to whoever did the sky replacements and stuff like that. Like, you can't tell the digital replacement, which is a good sign on them, and the colorist to blend it well.
They 100% HBO brought they brought their A team to this. This wasn't farmed out to like their junior operators behind the scenes, like the jackasses at Rings of Power. Amazon spent $2 billion, on a show, and then cut guys with less experience than I have to go out there and do it. This is how you release professional product that's going to get acclaim, that's going to sell hundreds of thousands, millions of copies of the PS5 remastered Last of Us. I'll have to go check the date, so don't quote me on this, guys. But that's coming soon, I think, probably somewhere around the fall of this year. But I'll double check that. But I think you're 100% right, Kingsley. They've nailed down on a technical level every dynamic I need for this to work. We were talking about the music last week. The music, they brought back the guy that did the music for the game. It's like they're like, hey, dude, come back. We need you for this. They didn't go out and get somebody that knew the guy, and then gave you like a 5th generation hand-me-down Wish version of that guy's soundtrack or his score. This is from the game, again, with slight variations, I think. But it's the guy. They credit the guy as being like the musical director in the credits. So it's there. All the pieces are there for this to be great.
Yeah, they're definitely trying. And one thing they're also really trying to do with this is blend a new audience as well as fans of the game. and I think they're doing a very good job on that as well.
I think they're pulling it off because I think there's something here for everybody. You got the people that like the wolf and cub trope are always going to show up for like the protective parent figure / dad, ferrying the kid through the dangerous place. You got zombie enthusiasts, you got game enthusiasts. There will be more horror down the line. I think more like straight up horror down the line. I think it's not going to be in spades because they've said that, in some of their interviews elsewhere, that they're going to shy away from massive zombie attack and awful human on human violence. But it's the nature of the story they're telling. And and actually it's funny that works as a good segue here. We obviously have a pivotal scene coming up towards the end of that there. The other big scene here is obviously, again, we warned you guys earlier about spoilers, so I don't feel bad doing it to you guys here. But we definitely have a resident badass. So
as we get into this scene, you can definitely see a little bit of the game as well, because that's what happens here. And what I'm going to say is that they get to Waypoint Bravo. Waypoint A was get outside. Now they're at Waypoint Bravo to drop Ellie off, get their battery, get their truck, or whatever they were supposed to do. They needed to
drop her. They needed to drop her and then go back to Marlene, and then she was going to give them a completely kitted out vehicle, guns, and everything they needed to go find Joel's brother. That's their long-term objective. Yep, you're right.
Yeah. So they get there, and just like in the game, the princess you're looking for is not in this castle.
Yep, 100%. Let me get you. I'm gonna get a quick interjection here, just because, again, just like the game, the entire setup where they roll up on where the Firefly team is supposed to be to hand Ellie over into their custody,
which is the state house,
right? Which was the state house. The abandoned truck was there. The aftermath of the shootout outside is there. But even more specifically, just they're ducked behind cover, looking at the truck, casing the situation out to make sure it's all good. I'm going to go back and run footage of the game. I think they were so specific to game detail that the overgrown car they were hiding behind was the same make, model, and color as the game. Imagine that. I think it was like a VW Bug, like a green one, or whatever it was. I will go back and check. But as I watched it, I'm like, I think I did that in the game. I'm pretty sure that's how that cutscene ends, where they walk up, like the transition from the cutscene ends, you take control of the character, and it basically you approach the car, and Joel says, "Get down." And like they're all looking to see where the Fireflies are, and there's nobody there. So again, I'm pretty sure that's how it worked. And even if it didn't, that would only benefit guys like us, like I said, fans of the game. But everybody else watching would be like, well, yeah, of course. Like, why would they just like walk in and be like, and try and drop this kid off? Like, the world's full of zombies and fucking people that'll shoot you and take your shoes. So it made sense. But let's talk about that last scene there at the State House, because I got a couple things to say about it. They're both pretty good. But what did you guys think of the scene? What did you and the wife think of the scene when Joel leads them inside?
They took their time going in properly, how I would go into a situation like that. Unknown situation, unknown enemies. You don't just charge in and like, hey everybody, I'm here. Right. But you see that there was a gun. They explained what happened. That looked like one guy got infected, and then they had a shootout, and then they see that other people are infected. So pretty much everyone dies.
Not our cast guys, the Fireflies that were at the State House.
The Fireflies that they were supposed to meet, leaving them with nowhere to go. This is where Tess starts freaking out. She gets a little ramped up. She's like, there has to be a radio, like something to point us to the next area. And Joel's like ready to throw in the towel. He's ready to quit. Like, you can see that in him from the first one. Like, he has like this much wiggle room, and if it doesn't go down this narrow path, he's out. And I think that's just being broken, losing his wife early, losing his daughter at the beginning of the spread in the U.S. or in Texas, and now this huge failure that's supposed to lead to him finding his brother. He's like, let's go home, and Tess was like, that's not my home. and that was a huge statement in itself. Like, this isn't where we're supposed to be.
Right? That they're different. They're actually not carbon copies of each other. That they have very different interpretations of the circumstances. Sure, keep going.
Then we go and we find out why she's freaking out, and this is the part that got me, and I realized about it. This becomes a redemption arc right here and there when she's talking, and you find out she's been infected. She's been bitten. And you can see, like, it's been maybe, I'd say half an hour to an hour from when they had the fight with the clickers to when they get to the State House. And they show Ellie's arm again, where there was nothing from where she was bitten, because she did take a bite for Joel, which we did miss in the museum. She took pretty much a bullet for Joel.
In the scuffle, they were both on the ground. That was pretty dope. That was a good scene. A good part.
When the clicker goes over the top.
That was good stuff. But Tess has the collarbone bite. Keep going. You're on a roll, dude.
Yep. So she's just like, and then the part is, she knows she's going to die. At that point, she knows there's no hope for her. But the part is, you can see the hope in her when it came to the little girl, when she's talking about what she could mean. And she's like, if we get this done, it could erase all the bad stuff we've done. We could save everybody if this turns out to be what it's supposed to be. And that's how I want to go out, knowing that I moved the ball forward of saving humankind. Despite all the people I've killed, all the drugs I smuggled in, all the stuff that we've done. Because they said it earlier that me and Joel are not good people. So for us to keep you alive, we need to know the value in you. And she's talking to another human in this. Like, there aren't many humans left, and she's like, we need to know the value of you just to keep you alive. And now she's talked about saving mankind. So you can see she's come around based on her own mortality and what this little girl could mean.
Dude, I thought, and we already gave Tess the resident badass, because she 100% earns this coming up. You mentioned redemption arcs. You can see the click, no pun intended, the click go through Joel's eyes, because her last line she says to him is, save who you can save. And it clicks. He grabs Ellie by the hand, and they get the fuck out of Dodge. There's no hesitation. There's no argument. There's no telling Ellie what the plan is. He is now a man on a mission, right? He has been directed to do this, and now he's going to be like the fucking Terminator, the good one, in T2. Like, he is now, this is how this is going to be.
Yeah, and she even said, she's like, no matter what you thought we were or what was going on, it's like, promise me you're going to finish this. We're going to get her to where she needs to be. Yep. He's like, no matter what you thought of us, give me this one thing.
Yep. That was good shit. Do this one thing for me. They got they changed up the dialogue from the game as they're going to have to do a little bit, but there was the one scene I watched before the show. The actions and the beats, from the search to the reveal of the wound to the decision to go to her setting up the part that they're holed up in when they realize, the infected are on the way, with like kicking over the barrels, dropping grenades and just getting ready to basically send up a giant, one big FU to every clicker within a block radius. All that stuff is great. The dialogue between Joel and her right there are great. Ellie basically has like nothing to say, because she should not have had anything to say in that moment, because she's a terrified kid and there's 10 dozen zombies coming to eat you and shit like that. Tess definitely earns the resident badass for that, because holy hell, for a character that's only been around 2 episodes, who I knew had been bitten, who I knew wasn't going any further than the State House, I didn't say I got choked up over it, but it was a moving moment, because we get to see one more of the things I love best in these characters, right? As the infected are coming in, Ellie and Joel, they're on the move, they're gone, right? She's frantically trying to get the lighter to work so she can just pitch it down into the pool of petrol or whatever it was, light the grenades, light the ammo, light the gas, that way she can just boom and go out, right? The lighter won't light. Zombies are running by her, like ignoring her, and then as the viewer or as somebody experienced in the genre knows, it's like, okay, either they don't see you or they know you're infected and they don't care, yada yada. But then one of them ugly sons of bitches stops and shuffles over to her, and dude, Tess looks terrified, right? The zombie rolls right up on her and basically gives her like giant fungal mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. It's disgusting, right? And you can see her eyes, they're starting to flicker because like, the infection has now been amplified or accelerated by whatever is, he's spitting into her throat kind of thing, like alien style.
Yeah, hallucinogenics.
Right, basically, it's taking control. And you wonder if she was struggling with the lighter because that was already happening, or if it was a mechanical problem with the lighter. I think it's probably a little bit of both. But she summons the will finally to get it to click and then to drop it and set the explosion off. What I love most about that, again, is the terror that she's experiencing as they're approaching. Because, dude, she's not Wonder Woman. She's not Storm. She's not an anime superheroine from, and I don't watch anime, so I can't quote you a character. You know what I mean? She's just a chick. Like, she's just a regular woman that like smuggles to get by. She's done some violent shit to other people. But dude, let you find out there's 30 zombies about to kick your door down. All of a sudden, you're not exactly, again, John Wick. And I love that about that character. I'm sorry, call me crazy. If you write a complex character, I don't care if she's a female and she goes badass. It works. It just works. She didn't pick up one of the equipment cases that probably weighs 100 pounds loaded and fling it across a desk and then, press one boot up against it and then shotgun a zombie in the face. No, that's not what this show is. This is about people surviving.
Yeah. Which leads me to my one nitpick.
Hit it.
Why didn't he grab some ammo? Why didn't they grab a grenade?
Dude.
Why didn't they grab some of the stuff that's just laying around?
Dude, as a guy that loves Resident Evil, right? As a guy that loves Resident Evil, The Last of Us, DayZ, all the other ones, right? When I saw the cases and the ammo cans, I'm like, backpack to the war zone in me was like, the DMZ was like, backpack, do this shit. There's got to be a grenade launcher in one of these like heavy weapons. There's got to be something useful here.
Even just the ammo, because eventually you're going to run out of 5.56.
Well, dude, I mean, think about it. They said in episode 1 that the guy that they get their drugs from down in Florida basically just makes pills and bullets. So you're right. It's a logical global shortage on ammunition. But if I'm Joel, I'm like, all right, so you think the mission, you're chalking the mission and you're going back to Boston with Ellie. You just don't want to take that back with you anyway? Like, not that you're going to keep going and might need it, but like, bro, you don't think there's an application or sales potential here? Like in the QZ? Yeah. Like, come on. I'll do that. Or that irked the video gamer in me hardcore. They didn't explore a little bit more. But
yeah, that was my nitpick. I was like,
it's a minor one. It's a minor one, but it absolutely works.
I say we take off. Move the side from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
All right, guys, we're up against the hour, so we're going to give you our final thoughts. I'm liking this show. I have nothing bad to say about it at all. Final thoughts for this week from Winterwolf. Dude, give me more Joel and Ellie. Let Bella Ramsey keep going down this path where she's a scared kid who's, in the middle, like, puberty and all that good stuff. Let her develop the relationship of being like vulnerable with Joel, but tough when she needs to be, because I'm looking forward to the parts of this show where she's invariably going to save him. You're not going to get any complaints out of me that, oh no, the show's woke because Ellie saved Joel. I'm like, did you play the game? You know what I mean? So I don't think that's coming, and unless they interject a completely fabricated character to make that happen, I think the show's going to coast just like House of the Dragon did for the most part. And so far through 2 episodes, the only characters they've invented that I can think of are the pre-show panels, like the doctors that they've interviewed, and that's it. Everybody else in episode has been part of the core story. Even the Federer soldier that he was buying and selling the pills from, then he beat to death, Joel. So I mean, this is all basic stuff, but I think they're hitting all the notes, and I think this is going to be a good show down the stretch. It looks like the game. It sounds like the game. The characters are really starting to sound like characters from the game. I mean, even like when we say it looks like the game just in terms of the scenes that they shoot and how people act, we talked a little bit before about the actual, just like the color matching that they use in the show. If we actually did a split screen, and maybe we'll do that next week, where we can find game footage and just plaster it right next to what we see in the show. They're not frame by frame perfection, but like the tone is there, the mood is there. Dude, I'm digging it, dude. I gotta stop gushing, or I'll just gush until tomorrow. But my final thoughts with the Doofy rating is, dude, give me 5 shiitake mushrooms out of 5 shiitake mushrooms. I don't know. It was that good. I enjoyed every second of the show this week.
All right.
Sorry, not sorry.
Well,
Yep.
I thought the show was pretty good from start to finish. There was no real major thing to say bad about it. Of course, as reviewers, we have to find something to nitpick about, like not grabbing ammo when there's nothing but ammo around you. But
Piles.
overall, it was a good show. It's technically done well. As I said earlier, I couldn't tell if it was done on a with the green screen background, or if it was shot on set and then just a simple sky replacement, or if it's like a back lot that they set up like big prints in the background. And colors great. They're definitely using the full range of the color that you can get from a planet that is being taken over by plants. So this is a great show, great visually, good storytelling, and of course, great acting. Yeah, I'm going to give this 2 clickers coming at you in the dark.
Nice. Gave them both. Love it. Dude, before we get out of here, though, you mentioned you watched this episode with your wife. I don't remember if she had watched episode 1. Did she? First of all, she did? Okay. And second of all, is her opinion wildly different than ours? Or where is she at as a normie? Because I assume she's not a retired gamer or has massive exposure to this kind of stuff.
She actually, even though I had the game when we were together and I played it, she never really, watched. She's enjoying it. As I said earlier, her big point out was that Pedro Pascal loves slow shows, and this is a slow-paced show. It's not action-packed, and they literally, I think they went 10 miles in this whole thing, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
In this episode, so they didn't really get far. Like, they're still in Boston.
Oh yeah, they're downtown. They haven't left anywhere remotely Boston yet. Yeah.
So that was her only takeaway that she told me.
But she wasn't bored. She wasn't bored. She wasn't confused by story elements.
She said the only reason she was looking down is because it was gross and because the clicker's makeup and the prosthetics were amazingly done. Yeah, and that's one of the first things, according to the creators, that they started on was the clicker, because they had to get that right. Because you would have people who know the clicker and go, oh man, that's scary. And then you have people who don't know what's coming and go, oh man, that's scary. Yeah. And they had to get it right.
Can you imagine, right? Because I whacked Netflix and Paramount earlier. I'll take another shot at them right here. Could you imagine if the dickweeds over to Party City, get some zombie makeup, we'll boot up the clicker sound from the game, and we'll just smear some of the gray paint and the yellow and this and that and pass that off as a clicker. The show would be done. The show would be DOA after a great first episode. If they had botched this scene, right, with the first appearance of a clicker in the show, like the first in your face clicker, not just like in the distance, I'd have checked the F out. This video would have been a whole lot different. I'd have probably been like, you can watch the rest of this crap. I'm probably not gonna. We'll see. I don't know. But again, it cost them nothing to reference source and stay true to it. So I think that's probably our shared final thought for the week. But King Z, unless you've got anything else to add, we are right up on the hour now. What do you got for us in closing? Anything else?
I should be hitting the road later this week. So next episode for me will be from a new location. Actually, it'll probably be the same location that I did when I was on the road last time. So we know what to expect there. We expect long
upload times. All right, that's it for King Z. I'm Winter Wolf. You can check out the channel at Winter Wolf's Den. We're also on Twitter at Winter Wolf's Den. And then we will have an upcoming Instagram channel, page, whatever you kids are calling these things these days. But until next time, we appreciate you guys stopping by. Sub to the channel if you like. Comment below. We'd really like to hear what you guys are talking about on the show. There's got to be some people with negative opinions out there somewhere. I'd like to hear from them because I'd like to talk to you personally about it. But until next time, we'll see you.